Is Killmonger just a defender? Well, pretty much, but he's still a pretty cool champion. However, his best use is by far defense. Why is he so good for defense, and why do I think he is a top 3 defender in the game? Well, first off, his massive health pool. As a 7-star rank 2 champion, you have the advantage of having a massive health pool, but Killmonger's at base is one of the highest in the game. So having 7-star rank 2 stats plus a massive health pool at base, and this man is so hard to defeat. It is so crazy. Additionally, he has access to stat focus as a 7-star, which means block penetration, or just even physical or energy res. Now, here's the big thing about Killmonger as a 7-star. The challenger rating is a massive thing because it reduces the opponent's crit rate if they are a 6-star champion. Now also, he has base crit res in his kit, so having that plus challenger rating, and you cannot crit this guy pretty much. It is so rare to crit him, and that's why he's such a good defender, because he is just that tanky. The no crits plus the massive health pool, and this man is so annoying. Plus he has the counter punch charges, he has the very annoying reverb as well. He also gains power from debuffs, so it's just really hard to defeat this guy in a regular battleground scenario. But of course he does have his counters like CGR, even Shuri does work, but he is still one of the best, if not like a top 3 defender in the game. But additionally, he does have some use on attack as well. He has access to True Strike, which bypasses evade, auto block, and every single res in the game, which is so good. He also has access to bleed, which is normal for a skill champion. He has access to not much after that, right? He does have indestructible in the SP2, which is good for cheesing some stuff, but besides that, he's really just a defender because of the low damage output. But hey, maybe a 7-star Killmonger does have that extra damage bump. So no synergy, Sig 20 Killmonger, let's see how he does here. And of course I took him up for defense. I just wanted like an extra defender to have in like Battlegrounds or maybe even Alliance War. So I feel like it was the best thing to do. And if I had an Awakened Atuma, it would be him easily, but I don't, so that's unfortunate. But Killmonger is still pretty cool. So what you want to do in this fight is you just want to stack up your bleeds up to like 20 something, and then once you're at 20 something, drop the SP3, detonate a ton of bleeds, and then that is pretty much it. It's not too bad, it's very straightforward, and that's like a good thing about Killmonger is his rotation is pretty much non-existent. There is no stress, there is no impracticality, there is just hit the opponent, do damage, get bleeds, detonate the bleeds, congrats, you win. Is it good damage? Maybe not, right? But he still is pretty good utility-wise. And Killmonger used to be such a powerful attacker back in the day because of his indestructible and the True Strike. He was regarded as like a top 5 skill champion. It was insane, right? But these days, at least he still has use on defense because his stock value in defense has risen up so much with Battlegrounds because his counters are very niche. And while I was talking there, we detonate the SP3, we drop the SP1, and that fight is done. And that was like, what, a minute and 29 seconds? Honestly, not bad. For a rank 2 defender with no synergies or Oracle Masteries, that is not bad in the slightest. But like I was saying, Killmonger's counters are very niche, right? So you won't usually have them in a Battlegrounds deck, and if that's the case, then you are fresh out of luck if a rank 2 Killmonger shows up, because this man is terrifying. He has so much health, he has so many defensive abilities, it is just really annoying to deal with him, right? But now we have this Gauntlet Mcoc fight, and this is just a great showing of his True Strike. Now to get the True Strike, you have to counter punch like the opponent's special attack, and this I've never really liked about any champion, because if the opponent has like a very long distance special and they just like react super fast afterwards, you can't really counter punch their special attack. So it does lead to some pretty big mishaps, but also Killmonger has access to the counter punch charge. And this on the SP1 is very good for just those really annoying special attacks that push you far away, because you can just go in, block it with a counter punch, go unstoppable, and then just retaliate afterwards. For example, right there, I did it. I got the counter punch because Mcoc's SP2 has like insane reaction time afterwards. So that's why it's important to have the SP1 ready, but then again, the SP1 is not the damage dealer. The SP2 is the good stuff, man. The SP2 does so much damage if it does crit. Now, Killmonger's crit rate is fine, but stat focus does help that, so that's why a 6-star is pretty much inferior to the 7-star when it comes to that, at least. But also, the 6-star can be max sig, and the max sig Killmonger definitely does more damage than the sig 27-star, because when Killmonger is max sig, the attack rating bonus from having True Strike and Reverb up is massive. It does a ton for the champion's damage output. But speaking of damage output, look at those bleeds go, man. Like 14,000 for the bleeds in total. Not bad at all. And this was Golem Mcoc in about 2 minutes flat. So that is honestly not too shabby. It could be better, obviously, but it was still pretty decent. 2 minutes for that much health really isn't that bad. But now we have some Act 8 matchups, and Act 8 is pretty good for him because the damage bump from the nodes is very, very noticeable, so it helps him clear some stuff better. But like in Battlegrounds and Alliance War even, he's not the fastest, obviously, but his utility and his really good tankiness is what makes him a decent attacker, at least. He is currently Decay, which is the Battlegrounds and Alliance War tactic right now, so that is a nice bonus for him. I don't think it affects his damage output that much, but it does let him take some of those very, very nasty sugar pill matchups. But here we drop the SP2, a nice 61,000 crit, and now the damage output is looking pretty dang nice, man. And the bleed is doing its job, right? It's preventing the unstoppable from triggering. Well, now that I say that, it triggered, but for the most part. And this is kind of a problem with Killmonger. His bleeds don't last too long, and they don't stack. I feel like if they stacked, and also that SP2, man, that was pretty good. If the bleed stacked, it would be a whole different story for Killmonger. I feel like if the bleed stacked, he would be like 2 times better on attack. His damage output would be so good with those stacking bleeds because he already crits quite often, right? And that triggers the bleeds a lot. But they don't stack, so the result is just some very mediocre bleed damage that just triggers all the time, when it could be stacking, which would just be so much better, I feel like. But yeah, of course, Killmonger is a defender purely, so having multiple bleed stacks would be a bit too good for a defender, I feel like, but it would still be nice to see, of course. But Killmonger right now, he has a use, and some champions don't have a use, so I feel like he shouldn't be a priority for an offensive buff because there is no need. He is currently doing very well in the game right now as being a top 3 defender, right? But yeah, that matchup was pretty clean. That SP2, such a beauty to see, especially when it crits. But now we have this Wolverine matchup, and this is just a quick showing of his bleeds bypassing damage caps, right? And if he had stackable bleeds, it would be a whole different story. He'd be crazy good for this matchup, but since his bleeds don't stack, it's just some extra nice... It's just a nice bonus of damage, right? It's nothing too crazy. But yeah, we drop nothing here because we got to play it safe. You can't drop special attacks against Rage because if you do, they'll go unblockable, which will mean that you are pretty much done for. But guess what? He goes unblockable anyway, so now I have to play good, but thankfully this is where Killmonger's massive crit res, massive armor rating, and just massive tankiness overall comes into play because you can't really do damage to him, even on like a very strong defender with a ton of furies because he is just that tanky. But now we have some pretty good bleed damage going on here. We can just drop the SP1 and we get the crit, but it gets capped, so it's whatever. And yeah, this matchup is now over. So he handled it pretty well. The bleeds are doing a good job at just giving us extra damage output against a damage cap. So there is that. And that was like, what, a minute and something, you know, for Killmonger, pretty average, right? But for most champions, that's kind of on the lower side. But now we have this Heimdall, and like I said, True Strike is such a good ability, and Killmonger has one of the best True Strikes in the game. because you get it so easily, right? It's just like one special attack from the opponent, and then you have it for the rest of the fight because they will just constantly throw that special attack, and then that means you just get to keep on getting the True Strike, and the True Strike has great duration. This champion has great durations all around. The bleed is fine because it doesn't stack, so you just keep it up for the entire fight. The True Strike basically permanent as well. The Indestructibles are actually permanent, so it's pretty good. The counter punches last a while too, so everything just lasts a good amount of time. And the reverb is good for sure. I feel like it is a nice balance of annoyance on defense, but also good value on attack with the signature ability. So yeah, all around great durations, but the damage output still just isn't really all there, I feel like. Of course, it's not like Groot level, but it's also not anything too great in the skill class because the skill class is just crazy these days, man. There's Kate Bishop, there is Mcoc, there is who else that's just like insane damage wise. Even Valkyrie has just very strong damage output, and Killmonger nowhere near that, right? But then again, those champions are purely attackers while Killmonger is purely a defender, but he still does some okay things on attack. That's why he's so cool, because he has a use, but he also does some other stuff in the opposite spectrum as well. That's pretty dang sweet, man. And yeah, Killmonger, just a pretty cool champion, really fun to play. Like, his aggressiveness is super cool, and the animations are top tier for a champion that doesn't have like that many powers, right? He's just a very good warrior. So honestly, an awesome champion. And yeah, that's about it for me.